Welcome to episode number 13 of Life of Leadership in Lorain County. Before we get started today, before I introduce my special guest, even though you saw a picture of him a little bit earlier, I want to thank my sponsors. First of all, I want to thank Brian Jankowski, BCT Alarms. They are your local service provider for security. BCT Alarms, again, they have a bunch of different technology where you can pretty much run the security of your company or the security of your house through your cell phone. I also want to thank WOBL AM 1320 and 107.7 FM and WDLW AM 1380 and 98.9 FM for the support that they've given me. I also want to throw a shout out to the Lorain, the Morning Journal, and the advertisement that they give me as well. And it's great to work with awesome companies in Lorain County. Now, without further ado, I want to introduce you to our guest today on our podcast, and this is Randy Fortin. Randy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Bob. Thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. I'm ready to go.
That's great.
So before we started, you were chatting a little bit about Doug and Lori Wilbur.
Yeah, that's I saw the sponsors you had and you just mentioned, and of course they're really wonderful people. I'll just start out. I came to Ohio in 2006, so I haven't been here that long. I came for 3 to 4 years, and I ended up staying now for 15 years, 16 years coming on. And Doug Wilbur was on the board of Mercy Lorain and Mercy Oberlin hospitals. And he and Sister Caroline Smith brought me onto the board of Mercy Health. And then as Doug took on the chair of Mercy Health, he asked me if I'd be vice chair, which I took on with him. And he mentored me on the hospital process and board trustee leadership. And then I took the chair of the board of Mercy Lorain and Mercy Oberlin. And had a great time. He was a fantastic mentor, and I considered myself a cool cat oldie. So I really do appreciate your sponsors.
Yeah. So you and I were chatting before we started recording. I do this video every week, and the 13th virtue of transformational leadership I talk about is relationship. And you and I had an opportunity to sit down several weeks ago. You took me on a tour of the Fab Lab over at Lorain County Community College. And we sat there and we chatted, and you impressed the daylights out of me. So you and I started building a relationship, got it to this point today where I wanted to interview you on our podcast. But give me some of your background, because your background is unique for the positions that you've held, where you started. So talk to us a little bit about, where you started.
I'd be happy to do that, Bob. I grew up in a small farming community in Illinois called Manteno, Illinois. And in my career, I started out as a chemistry teacher and a physics teacher and a head coach in both cross country and track. So after I got out of college, with that degree, I was a teacher for 5 years. At that point, I thought if I don't go back to grad school, I probably never will, with the intention of maybe teaching or working at a college. And I went to a school called Colorado School of Mines. It's an engineering school in Colorado. And I got my master's degree in metallurgical engineering. Well, about that time, I thought, well, I have 2 little kids, and it'd be good to get some industry experience and some industry pay. And so I started with a company called Nalco Chemical Company, which was at the time one of the larger water treatment companies in North America. And it's now Nalco Eco Labs, and it's about a $10 billion company. But I rose through the ranks with them to be vice president of Nalco. And I was able to travel in 58 countries doing business around the world. So I got a lot of experience in countries, particularly in large industrial water treatments like paper mills, utility plants, power plants, nuclear plants, mining operations, those type of places that use a lot of water and need to recycle, reuse, and clean it and be more environmentally appropriate in some of these large industries. So I had the opportunity to go to Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, spent a lot of time in the Ukraine, South America, Peru, Chile, and was in 58 different countries in doing that, and really had a great time. I was in Singapore for 6 years. I led our Asia Pacific business and traveled all throughout Asia to our plants, our manufacturing locations, our customers all over the Pacific Rim for 6 years. And I moved my family there, 3 children, which I'm very proud of. And now I have 4 grandchildren. But they enjoyed the travel with me and living overseas. And it's an interesting opportunity to live in a culture where you're the minority. And it's an interesting opportunity to go to other cultures to try to talk about technology and services collaboratively and work together across multiple cultures. I learned a lot, and my children learned a lot doing that. After that, I kind of was recruited to a company called SciTech, which is now part of Solvay. And SciTech, I ran a global P&L, a global business for them. And again, I had directors in different continents, so I traveled around the world routinely. I joked that sometimes United and American Airlines would send me a letter with requesting my schedule because they were doing their profit planning because I had spent so much time traveling and doing all that. Well, anyway, fast forward in 2006, I was asked to come to Ohio because of an old friend of mine who I'd worked with for 20 years at Nalco, and he became the COO of Nalco. He took the CEO job of PolyOne, which is now Avion in Avon Lake. Said, the great company, needs some work. Let's turn it around, make it a specialty company. There's great opportunity here. And I said, okay, I'll come for 3 to 4 years. So I moved my family here to Avon Lake, and we started at PolyOne. And I had a great run there, really enjoyed what I did. And then I retired in 2010, actually March 30th, 2010, coming up, right on 12 years now. And really enjoyed doing that. Got to learn a lot about the community in Lorain, and I fell in love with it. So I did come and work here for 3 to 4 years, but I'm still here. But I joined the board of Mercy, as I mentioned earlier. Also was on the board of the Avon YMCA. And then also I was on the board for 6 years at Leadership Lorain County. And I'm sure you're familiar with Leadership Lorain County and what they do. I gave a talk to the class, the best class of 2022, just about 10 days ago. So they came over also to the Campana Center. So with my retirement, I started doing what I believe should be done when you retire, particularly when you have spent your whole career coaching and teaching and mentoring and growing businesses. Someone once told me, and I use this in my sales training a lot when I do them, Bob, is, where the word coach originated was really from a coach is defined back in the 1600s as a vehicle that transports a person of importance from one destination to another. And if you think of that in the concept of a coach, whether it's in athletics or a coach in what you're doing and what we've done for our careers, it's really about other people. Leadership's about others. Coaching is about others and helping to transport people from where they are to where they want to be. And that's the offering, I think, of leadership. So anyway, I had done that. I was doing consulting for 10 years. I started a firm called VCS2, Value Creation Strategies and Solutions. And I worked with a lot of the companies I had in the past, customers, engineering material companies, metal companies. And along the way, I got to be friends with some of the folks at Lorain County Community College. And I was asked to help with a study to look at what we do with manufacturers and how we could reach out to the community better, because that college is incredible. It's a gem in the community that really does a lot for the community, and the community does a lot to support them. And I was asked if I would stay on as part-time as a executive in residence, and I didn't even know what that was, at the Campana Center. And I've been doing that now about 2 years, and I really, really enjoy doing that. And I've met so many wonderful people in this county, and my wife and I now calls this home. And this is where we retired. And, we have a sailboat we go on in the summer, which is our kind of mobile home on the lake. And we sail around the Great Lakes. And we really enjoy living here in Northeast Ohio.
Well, I tell you what, you've given me a long list of things to start asking questions on. So the first one is, I was going to ask you about, what did you learn as a track coach and teacher, or teacher and track coach, or and cross country coach? What did you learn through that period of time in your life that brought you success later?
Well, leadership is about others. And when you're entrusted with a leadership position, you have to exhibit listening skills, and you have to think primarily of others and other success first and foremost. I used to have a friend who ended his letters as a coach that said, nothing good ever happens without enthusiasm. And so being part of a leader and a coach in that kind of a role was about having confidence in others, about being able to turn over the reins and turn over the responsibilities of the actions to others, and to have faith in others, and to be humble enough to listen. The old adage, there's you're born with 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that's the appropriate ratio to use them in.
Yeah, I went to a single screen because I started taking more notes. So
okay.
you are empowering me to ask great questions. So thank you for that. Okay, so the next thing is you mentioned Leadership Lorain County. So Julie Cruz Blair and I are friends. Yeah. She actually was interviewed on episode number 3 of Life of Leadership in Lorain County. Sure. And since you brought that up, I wanted to make sure that we told everybody that on May 4th over at Lorain County Community College, the Leg Up on Leadership Conference is going to be held. That's a Wednesday. Registration is at 8:30 to 9 o'clock, and the event goes from 9 o'clock to noon. So
that's over at the Spitzer Center?
That's over at the Spitzer Center. Yep.
Great. Okay, great.
So it's a great, don't tell anybody, but it's a little bit of a recruiting opportunity for best class of 2023.
Great.
So Julie and I, we go back a couple of years. She's been a blessing to me, and I hope I've been the same to her. Okay. So I love the whole story of the coach, right? Moving precious cargo from one spot to another. And that's, so talk to me about that, because I guess somebody could have that attitude, but unless it's a heart attitude, can you really, really do that properly?
Well, it's got to be from the heart. It's got to be concern for others. One of the things I always kind of taught the teams, I taught my children that, don't surrender to your doubts. Being led by the dreams that are in your heart. And if you do that, you're going to have a very fulfilling life, and you're going to focus on the things that are important to you or the team. There's a difference, of course, between, a leader and a manager. You want people to be concerned and committed to what they're doing, not trying to be compliant in what they're doing. And that goes for whether you're coaching an athletic team or a high functioning business team or a group of students or part of a club. It's really, commitment creates enthusiasm. Enthusiasm creates success. And then you just can't surrender to your doubts. Follow what's in your heart, and things will go well for you if you're willing to work and focus on those activities.
We take a look again. We stay on this whole coaching aspect. We take a look at this team, St. Peter's. Do you follow NCAA basketball?
Yeah, I saw the game. They were in the Elite Eight, and then they lost last night. But they really did lose to an elite team, and they were in that presence, and they actually became an elite team with the entry into that 8.
Yeah, a school that we never heard of, that I never heard of. I mean, and I've been in Jersey City quite a bit. I worked for Merrill Lynch for a decade, so we had offices in Jersey City. I never heard of that company that school.
College, yeah,
and they come out of nowhere, and I'm looking at their coach, and he is enthusiastic, and he fights the battle for his team, and he's out to make them the best version of themselves. It's empowering to watch.
Well, when leaders are humble and leaders listen, leaders learn. And when they learn, they're able to utilize that in their mentoring capability. And then you can get so much out of people if you're working toward a common goal. Part of you talk about this week is about relationship building, which to me is always first and foremost as humans. You've probably heard of the rule of sevens, right? Rule of sevens of 7% is 7% of what you learn from people is the text, the words that they say. 55% is really on observational behavior, physical gestures, eye movements, hand motions. People can read you. And when you're in a one-on-one person-to-person meeting, 7% is in the words, 55% is in the movements and the physical body movements. And then the other 38% really is in some of the tonal effects on your voice and some of the things, the volume and the pitch and how you do that. So, being a leader, you have to be able to observe and you have to listen and you have to be humble enough to do that. Because if you are and you have enthusiasm, I will argue what follows along that is then you have a group of people on a team that become committed to the activities of excellence and aren't just being compliant to a managerial approach to what goes on. One of the classes that I routinely teach is on sales training, sales management, leadership management, if you will. And I talk about relationships first, and then questioning and understanding needs of others between what they have and what they need or they want, finding that gap. And part of that gets a little bit overlooked is the training, if you will, on active listening. Because actively listening to somebody means you're really intent on what they're saying and how they're saying it. And you're trying to get that understanding from body language, from the words they say, the inflection they say, and what's really important. And active listening helps to drive all the behaviors that improve questioning and improve leadership. So in modules that I've done in the past, active leadership really involves questioning and listening. And the listening skill is not so good in some people because we always are thinking about what we'd like to say next. And then you disengage and you're not listening as you actually should be or want to be listening to somebody. It's really important, I think, that if you have that clear understanding and people know you have that understanding, they're looking at you and you make them feel like you understand their problem or their issues or what they're trying to convey. And, understanding, there's an old saying that oftentimes people will not remember the words or remember what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And if you've made somebody feel like a winner, you've made somebody feel like they can do this, they can step up out of where they are now, not be afraid, face a new challenge, move forward. And there's a great sense of accomplishment for that, for the individual and for the mentor. So it's really important that we do that and remember that at all parts of the relationship and the listening, questioning, understanding part of call it a interpersonal communication process, a sales process, whatever you'd like to call it.
So that raises a couple questions for me. So do you have any good stories of people that have mentored you and have helped you along your journey?
Oh, I've had so many mentors, Bob. And the thing is if you ask somebody to help mentor you, and I think, Bob Campana and I are good friends, and I think he has said, maybe even on his blog, that he's had a lot of mentors along the way. And when you ask people to mentor you, they will most of the time. And when they do, they always have things to offer you that will help you grow. Don't be afraid to ask, because people usually are more than willing to support. So yeah, I've had good mentors both in high school as coaches and teachers. I've had good mentors in business. I had one gentleman, he was from Germany. He was the president of our international division when I worked at NALCO. His name was Peter Dobringhausen. And Peter asked me, with 3 small children, one in kindergarten and 2 in second and fourth grade, if I would go and move to Singapore with my family for a job they wanted me to do there. And I can remember thinking, whoa. And I put some of the beliefs that I have and what I wanted to do, and it was probably the best thing I'd ever done. And then he mentored me through that movement, simple things on what to take when I went to make it feel like home for the children. Take the things on the wall that are in their room, the little things that they enjoy to give them comfort and security. And just bring those things, furniture you can always get anywhere. And he gave me and mentored me as I did the first move outside of the United States to Singapore, which was quite an endeavor to travel that far with 3 small children. And my kids enjoyed it, and they enjoyed it so much. We were there 3 years, and then subsequently they asked me to go back. My wife likes to keep me a little bit humble and says, I didn't get it right the first time. I had to go back the second time. But in fact, it was during the time of the fall off of the Thai baht, and there was a financial crisis in Asia, and I knew the people and really enjoyed the people. And so I brought back a familiarity during a difficult financial time, if you will. And I asked my wife and the kids then, one was a freshman in high school and the other were in middle school, if they wanted to go back. They were off the table and upstairs packing. I mean, I didn't even have to ask. And so we moved, and my daughter, my 3 children now, matter of fact, my daughter's an expat living overseas with her 2 children, my 2 grandchildren, the oldest 2, and her husband. And my oldest daughter got an appointment to West Point from the Singapore American School. That was no easy task, but she graduated West Point and then got an MBA from University of Texas. And then my 2 other younger children, they found a book from their counselor at the Singapore American School, and it's called 40 Colleges That Change Lives. And they're small liberal arts colleges, no Big Ten schools by definition. And they wanted for, maybe students who aren't Division I category athletes or whatever, and they like a smaller environment. Well, my 2 youngest kids chose schools in Ohio, which what drove me to Ohio. My wife was like, Avon Lake, Ohio, we're going to be an hour from our son and 2 hours from our daughter. Let's go. And so they were sophomore and junior in college when we moved to Ohio. And one went to Denison and the other went to the College of Worcester. They're both now PhDs. My son's a PhD in geophysics, and my daughter is a PhD in polymer chemistry. And she married another gentleman who was in grad school at University of Colorado in polymer chemistry, and they both promptly moved to Portland, Bethany, Oregon, and joined Intel. And so those two, and they love the idea of travel and listening. And, my daughter kind of took that, that concept of don't surrender to doubt, be led by the dreams in your heart. And she kind of took that to mean, and often says to me, Dad, you taught me to be fearless. And I kind of laugh and say, I don't think fearless was the message. It was really, don't be intimidated by the doubts in your heart. And she said, well, it took me, I had to work over some of my fears,
So I'm going to take a step back, and it sounds like through the development of your children in these opportunities that you grabbed a hold of, right? It sounds like you're saying something along this line, right? Be comfortable about being uncomfortable. Go ahead and stretch yourself.
Oh, that's a great way to put it, Bob. I love the way that you put that together. And I think people interpret those things as it fits into their being and their understanding. I think that's a great way to say it.
Yeah, my first transformational leadership law that I go through is no excuses. So next week we're going to focus on no excuses, and the reason why I came up with no excuses is because we fear failure. As a result of that, we make excuses for why we weren't quote unquote successful by whoever wants to judge success.
Right.
And go ahead.
No, I totally agree with you. I'm doing a lot of nodding. I think you'd be a great coach to have, and so you're in a great field because you ask great questions, and then you kind of proceed with interpretation of those questions.
And so we can't make any excuses. We have to understand that we're going to fail. We need to be comfortable to stretch ourselves so that we do fail, and then we learn from that experience.
Exactly. And I'll just add one thing onto that, because of during the course of my opportunities to lead larger teams and doing things, what I've learned is that process does matter. Communication and how you communicate does matter. And developing a plan for how you're going to execute on what your goals are and how to orient yourself to have ability to have succeed. Don't undermine yourself by taking on too much or too little, by really focusing on your core values. When I would interview people to come to work at Poly One or wherever at the time, I would say really you've got to be focused on what are your core values. What are your beliefs, your family. How do you've got to put your priorities together and keep it in a certain priority. Or I kind of question their choice making. You've got to make sure that you keep those priorities of your core values and your personal growth plan in focus at all times. And then make sure you have always the ability to listen actively. When I changed on my kind of process going forward on a process for coaching or leading, we talk about relationships, of course, and then questioning and how to ask great questions to understand needs and wants, and then try to link that to the value that you can provide or your company can provide to your customers, students, whatever. But there's something that I became more aware of, but in a little bit later in life, because all of my connections during my career were always person to person, traveling to customers, traveling with, employees and working with them one-on-one. Once we hit the COVID world, we all had to learn a new medium, which we're using now, for instance, the virtual medium, the Zooms, the webs, the team meetings. And all of a sudden you lost a part of your reference point. If 7% were words and 55% were body language, all of a sudden you're getting it over the internet. And so I took a course to help me along the way, try to learn, my grandfather used to say, and so I'll tell you this little quip he always gave. He would say, son, remember, when you're green, you're growing, and when you're ripe, you're rotting. And so continue growing your whole life, continue learning. So at any rate, I took a active listening course, and it was focused on how to listen and actively show listening during a pandemic period when you're having virtual meetings. So we worked on different things of what people could do. For instance, you saw me, I just looked around, I was looking for my pen. And one of the things that I've noticed, is people often during the course of a meeting like this, you see them drift off to something here or look somewhere else. And that's portraying a message of, not being attentive or actually doing something different. So you've got to learn how to transmit your communication method that you did. For instance, you went dark on your screen and then I stayed on while you took a note and then you came back and then you mentioned what you did while you were gone. So that puts a great deal of comfort on the person you're dealing with and talking with. I often in a meeting with several people, if I have my pen like this and I'll take something, I'll kind of take my pen and purposefully go to my notes to take that note to attempt to show the respect that I'm really attentive and paying attention, but I need to take a note on this. I'm not drifting down to send a text message or to answer a text message. And I think learning how to do that in this environment enhances that questioning and discovery phase of relationship building, because it demonstrates, you're making them feel like you're really there and attentive and not making them feel like you're sending an email to somebody else and you're not caring. Sticking with the thought, people will remember how you made them feel, but maybe not what you said.
So the I was going to ask a different question, but I'll come back to that. So, excuse me. So, I went through a course. The name of the course is Everybody Communicates, but Few Connect, right? And the whole idea behind that course is how do you build that connection?
Yeah.
And recently, I was going to do a 6-hour workshop, and I'm thinking, what do I need to do to make this 6-hour workshop successful? And I've got like 7 of them booked from now until the end of June. And as I sat the morning of the first workshop, as I'm a little bit nervous because there's so much data that I have and so much information that I want to give.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they want to receive it, but there's
you want to share it. You want to share it.
Exactly. That I came to peace, right? Because I thought it's all about connection. It's all about, they're only going to listen or hear or remember 7% of what I said.
Yeah.
How do I make sure that I connect, right? How do I make sure that I'm not laboriously reading from my PowerPoint, right? As a matter of fact, so you're familiar with DISC, right? The personality profile.
Yes,
so,
right.
So the first thing, each of these individuals did the DISC profile.
Right.
And I've got, 90 slide DISC presentation.
Yep.
I turned it into like 7.
Yeah.
And got everybody up, communicated to them. This is the I group over here. These are the guys that are having fun. These are the guys that want to party. And as we go through this presentation, they're over here. They're not paying attention. And it's like, see, that's exactly who they are. Right. And I think sometimes we have so much fear because when we get up and we speak and we try to build relationships because we know so much, and we don't understand that it's not about what you know, it's how you make people feel.
Well, that's right. And part of that training, the DISC, or using any of some of the other ones like Myers-Briggs or other personality tests. One of the things that with DISC, you get the I people and they're over here in a like diversified or what's the name of one of the sales course that leadership being flexible. You really start to versatile salesperson. That's what it's called. And what you learn to do is actually understand the personality you're dealing with. And when I say understanding the person you're dealing with, what I mean is you've got enough respect for the people in the room that you understand that, while you may be an extrovert, they may be very introverted. They may be a different place on the DISC scale. They may be, an analytical and an amiable versus, say, a driver personality or very expressive personality. And if you think about it, when you're speaking with them and asking questions and you listen and you learn, some people have the ability to change their personality temporarily with great respect for the other person they're talking to modify their personality so that they can be heard better. That makes sense. I'll give you an example. I had an admin at NALCO in Naperville, Illinois. She was singularly outstanding. And she would be the type of person who, needed to be expressive. She wanted to have the relationships in great order. And if I came in on a Monday morning, this is a real example, a Monday morning, and I had told I had to have 5 slides on my budget, where we were year to date, last year to date, and where we're projecting now going forward, etc. And I come into the office and I tell her exactly what I needed, and I needed it by 10 o'clock, like no nonsense, right to the point. And then she kind of sat back and said, "Well, good morning, Randy. How was your weekend? Are the kids doing well?" And I kind of went, "Oops. Hi, Mary. How are you doing today?" All right. Well, it's funny because fast forward, I came to Poly 1, and I had a really competent, very good admin here in Avon Lake. And she had a different personality style than Mary, who I'd had for almost 10 years. And I would come in, and if I said to her when I walked in, "Hey, good morning. Did you have a good weekend? How's that little guy doing? He's 1 now, right?" She'd say, "What do you want?" Okay. So you can see the 2 different personality styles that I was dealing with, and I hadn't been perceptive enough to do what I needed to do to communicate effectively. So part of the DISC, as you talk about in training, to me is, utilize it in ways that helps you more effectively communicate with others that are different than you. And then you're not being phony. You're just showing enough respect for the other to change your personality briefly to be more effective in your communication.
I love the way that you put that out. And I'm actually I put down the time that we did this because I'm going to peel that out. And when I do my next presentation, I'm starting off with you explaining that.
Oh, thank you.
so then I could jump in, adds more to the presentation. So
well, I can throw one little piece in if you just bear with me on it. I was in a course where we had done those kind of personality differences and we categorized ourselves, right? Uh-huh. And then what they did was they had a set of tasks to be done, but there were 4 people in each group. And they put 4 people that were the one style, call it a driver style, 4 people that were the analytical style, 4 people that were, expressive. Well, long story short, I was in one of the groups that was a driver style because of my background and what I finished doing and the job I was in. So the 4 of us got in there and gung-ho, we're going to kick butt. We're going to win this competition. We can do this. And this is the way we all felt. The analytical felt, this is easy. We can analyze this 4 ways from center, and we got this, right? So it turns out during the exercises they gave us to do, there was one group that wasn't 4 analytical or 4 drivers or 4 expressives. It was 1 of each. And the group that had 1 of each kicked the rest of our butts. And the conclusion was by the instructor in the course at that time was, well, of course they won. They have a full brain.
That's right.
And that made a big impact on me, Bob, because it shows you that, don't get too cocky in what you're doing. Listen be humble, learn, try to communicate effectively after you listen to everybody, and you can have a more effective team. And I think that's something we miss sometimes in leadership trainings and trainings, that we don't put enough power on the differences and then utilize them to the collective strength.
Yeah, I love exactly what you do there, because what I'll do is I'll run discs on all the employees. I've got a meeting tomorrow, as a matter of fact, and there's 38 people that we run discs on, and out of those 38 people, there's one that has a little bit of I, just one that has a little bit of I. And my whole thought process is that I brings the creativity.
It does.
So they may be the ones that don't care about the work that gets done, but man, they're creative, and it helps us identify ways to be thinking outside the box. And we've got to bring those people in. I've got several local schools that I do this with, and it's amazing how the administrations at these schools are CS, SC, and then maybe a DC or two, but nobody with that I, with that creativity piece.
Yeah. Well, and that we now, the college has a course, we worked together collectively. I was part of the team that did this. And I really was proud of the academic team. They put together a course called Design Thinking. And some colleges are offering it, and we are offered it the first time just this semester. And Design Thinking takes a look at the concept of all the styles. It takes everybody to create innovation. And nowadays we have the tools. An artist can conceptualize what's a product can look like. That conceptual drawing can be converted to a CAD drawing and then transferred into a 3D printed part, for instance. And doesn't take an engineer and an expert in drawing blueprints to do that. And the idea of design thinking is it's the whole company working on design thinking. It's the whole company working on innovation. Design and innovation can happen anywhere and with anyone. It doesn't have to be the engineer. It doesn't have to be the chemist. It doesn't have to be the marketing people. It could come out of any part of the organization.
With that being said, let's jump into the Campana Center for Ideation and Innovation.
Yeah.
And what you do there, and the Fab Lab, and what's going on at LCC, and the amazing things that are over there.
Well, first of all, we're really proud. The Campana family helped and bequeathed us. The building is named after Patsy and Janae Campana. Bob and the Campana family's parents are both passed now. But it was a great gift to the school. And it started out in a small room. MIT started what was called Fab Labs back then, or maker spaces. And it was started by a guy named Neil Gorshenfeld, who runs the Center for Bits and Atoms. At any rate, we had a small Fab Lab, and back right prior to the pandemic, and call it October of what would it have been, 19 or right about at the October-November period before the pandemic, we opened up the new Campana Center, and MIT recognized what we have there, which is a large maker space. And it's the first super fab lab in North America. The first super fab lab was the University of Barcelona in Spain, but we got the designation as the first super fab lab in all of North America, which means we can make fab labs, which we do. We fabricate them in 40-foot trailers that get ordered by MIT, and we can ship them out around the world. We can make fab labs or fab carts that are smaller versions, that are transportable, that go to boys and girls clubs, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, to schools. And it's a part of a maker space where they might have vinyl cutters, 3D printers, laser cutters, and things like that. And a fab lab helps facilitate in a maker space the concept of, if you can think it, you can make it. And so that's what happens. We have fathers and daughters and mothers and all walks of life from 5 to 90 coming into the fab lab in the open hours to manufacture things. They may come in and bring a a case of wine glasses for a wedding for their daughter. And then they'll program and engrave with laser engraving the wine glasses. They'll want to make a part for a school project. They'll come in and make that part. We had one person came in and used the fab equipment and the 3D printers and said, I can make one better. Now has his own 3D printing company that he sells to major companies like Apple and Google, and he makes 3D printers on the east side of Cleveland. So we've had a lot of people come and make things and learn how to make things and develop entrepreneurial businesses in that fab lab. Now, Dean Kelly, or Dean Kelly Zalesnik at the college, she's the dean of the engineering, business, and IT at the college. She had kind of a dream and challenged the people in the fab lab, the professors in there who were outstanding, Scott Zetek, Jonathan Alexander, Chris Leone, Chris Roja, to name a few. But these guys were challenged with, if you can think it, you can make it in the fab lab. Now let's develop an automation engineering sector that if you can make it, you can manufacture it. So the Campana Center has got phonic 3D or phonic robots that can help make 3D products. They can do CNC machining or machining tools automatically. There's a lot of jobs that are left open every year that are high-paying jobs in CNC machining. We have companies that can't fill all the jobs, and that's one of the things that the college is working on with advisory committees from the community, listening to their needs and then developing programs around their needs to offer them in the community, things like Fast Track and Earn and Learn and internships and our MEMS program. We were fortunate enough, we have the first bachelor's degree program in the state of Ohio at a community college. And that's our MEMS program, which is microelectronics manufacturing. And all of the students in that 4-year program already have jobs committed and what they could do. We're expanding the program, adding a new instructor, professor, and increasing the size of that program. And we'll most likely add a new bachelor's degree program in automation, robotics in the fall, this coming fall of 22 that we're hoping to do. So, we really have a beautiful center, and it helps to buy down risk. If you think in terms of a manufacturing company, they want to try this automation, automated CNC machining equipment. They can come over to the college and make prototypes. Now, we won't ever make quantities in a manufacturing sense. We always want Northeast Ohio companies to do that. So you can come over and make a prototype, or you can have us help you make a prototype. We do that at the Campana Center all the time. And then if it's good, then you've invested in trying it on a scale which was low risk and low cost. And then you can add that capability to your own manufacturing site. So it's really a benefit to the community, how that's set up. We're really proud of the Campana Center, the Campana family, for what they've done, and then how the college has taken that to focus on the community at all levels. I had an 11-year-old little boy and his mom come in. I was in a meeting with someone who wanted to see the Campana Center, like we met, a couple of weeks ago, and he was standing outside the Fab Lab door at it was 12:25, and the open Fab Lab was going to be scheduled to be open at 12:30, and his mom and he looked a little confused and didn't know if they were in the right space, and the door was locked. So I excused myself from the tour for a second, and I went over and I met 11-year-old Brett, and he was interested in learning about 3D printing, and he had read about it, and he knew what he wanted to print, and he wanted to come in and learn. So I excused myself. I went over there. I talked to him about it, and I said, the building, this room will open at 12:30, and I'll bet those guys are having lunch, and they're going to be right on time. Sure enough, they came over, opened it, and he told them exactly what he wanted to do. And one of our guys, Chris Leone, said, absolutely, come on in, and I can help you get started with that. Now, I'm not going to do it for you, but we're going to get it up on the computer. You'll get your design in there, and then we can print it. And this kid lit up like you wouldn't believe. It was fantastic, just to see that in action with that age of person,
So you said that this was the first super fab lab in North America.
That's correct.
So
you can see that on the webpage.
And the first community college to offer a bachelor's degree?
A bachelor's degree in the state of Ohio. Yep. And the first bachelor's degree is in microelectronics manufacturing. A second one in automation and robotics will be coming soon. We have great people working in that, Lori Bacchus and Terry Sandu and some of the people within the Business Growth Services group who bring customers over to see and help them. We work on projects for the high schools. We work on projects for manufacturing companies. We make prototypes for them. We'll help them find a manufacturer in Northeast Ohio if they want to commercialize it. Because we won't ever take commercial business.
I understand the Avon football team is working on a project over there. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. We are doing. We'll be using one of our water jet cutters and making kind of a sculpture of probably one of their mascots, like the Eagles.
Yeah, so it's pretty amazing what we have here. I mean, Dr. Church, when he came to Lorain Community College, I don't think we ever expected what great ideas he would bring and what great leadership he would bring and what a great facility and an educational space that he put together.
Well, that's so true. I had the fortune when I first started the position, as I was working with the executive in residence and doing a study for them, to actually sit down and meet with Dr. Church at length. And, he really was and is a great leader. And I think one of the things, as you know, in leadership is about understanding and continuance, succession, and doing that. And then to take Marcia Ballinger, who had come up in through the ranks, did so many things, and then to take over the president's role after Dr. Church left. There's so much wisdom that man brought to the college, including building his succession plan for continuation. And Marcia has done an amazing job with what the college does, and then the team with Dr. Dryden, who's a dean or provost at the college, and then Tracy Green, who's vice president of strategic development at the college. And they're all forward-thinking people. The college is lean in upper management, I would say, and lean can be, as you and I know, very good when it comes to quick decisions and ability to act nimbly and quickly and support the community. And they do that in spades. So.
Well, believe it or not, we're getting close to our hour time here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump away and I'm going to just talk about our sponsors one last time. And then I'm going to come back to you, and I want you to give us some sage advice. Put a bow on this conversation.
Jeez. Okay.
Yes, the pressure is on, Randy, but yeah. I know that you can do it. And so when I come back to you, I want to hear some sage advice. What you think we need to do to move forward as leaders. Whatever you think. Okay.
Okay. Will do.
Okay, so I wanted to thank our sponsors, BCT Alarms, Brian Jankowski. They're our local safety service provider. If you're a company, they do fire suppression, they do fire alarms. Reach out to Brian, reach out to their team over there. I also want to thank WOBL and WDLW. For those of you that are in the Sheffield Lake area, you may have went over to Amber Oaks on Friday. So one thing that Gary and Renee Talat are doing over there at WOBL and WDLW is they are focusing on local companies and supporting those local companies. I love Amber Oaks. I eat there probably more than I'd like to admit, several times a week. Let's put it that way. Mondays they've got this great deal on burgers. So. That's Amber Oaks, WOBL, WDLW. Thank them for the support that they give me. I also wanted to give just a mention again, Leg Up on Leadership Conference. which is a leadership conference that is going to be led by Leadership Lorain County and Julie Cruz Blair. The registration is from 8:30 to 9 o'clock. It's at the Spitzer Center. And actually, Julie and I are going to be doing some stand-up possibly together, maybe some comedy stuff there. So it'll be worth the treat just to watch me fall flat on my face. So if you have some time on May 4th, come meet with us. Now, all right, Randy.
Okay.
Now it falls on you. Some sage advice.
Well, I think at the end, first of all, thank you for the opportunity and the questions. It's good to always look back and reflect a little bit. I think I love the name of your business, Life of Leadership, because you can always make a difference, and everybody needs to kind of give back, because when you give back, you actually gain more than you can ever give. I often feel in what I do now that, geez, I must give more because I've gotten so much. But I think my advice at the end would be, don't ever be afraid to fail. Number one, think how many times, and it's famous, you can look it up, that Thomas Edison failed at finding the filament for the light bulb. And then keep enthusiasm. He didn't find thousands of ways. He didn't fail 1,000 ways. He found 1,000 ways more that didn't work. And he saw that as success on his progress. Develop a life plan about what's important to you. Sit down and write it down. Think about it a little bit and write what's your life plan. And during life, I think the words I like to use are listen, communicate, be humble, be enthusiastic, and make sure that you have a good, solid work ethic. And in doing that, you'll always be successful, and it will be inevitable that you'll be successful. And then at the end, I like to say I've been young a long time, but I've been retired from, businesses, corporate life, if you will, for 12 years. And now I've been able to come back into the academic sector and work with the interface between business and with academia and with education. And it's a perfect way for me in my career, I feel, to offer and give back and learn. And I've been energized by what I've been exposed to and what I've learned working with the college and the students there. So keep doing that in your life. So, listen, communicate, be humble, be enthusiastic, and continue learning your whole life. That would be it.
And that is some awesome advice. Randy, thanks so much.
My pleasure, Bob. Take care, and hope we'll be in touch. I'm sure we'll talk often in the future. It was great getting to work with you.
Thank you so much.